You're watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and for the next half an hour or so, we are going to be counting down the YouGov list of Britain's most popular doctors, although not the YouGov list of most popular doctors that you were expecting,
Harold
so
Shipman.
you don't have to.
There's
Hi.
a Guardian article. You could have used a Guardian article.
Oh no, I've done this myself. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
Hi, I'm Mark.
Hi, I'm Matt.
So we've done a few YouGov polls, 3 in the past, because they're amusing and they're conversation starters. And obviously, we were going to get around to Doctor Who at some point. And there is a YouGov Doctor Who poll that was published in 2019, I think, which was 5 years ago. And the obvious thing to do would be go to that poll. But, you know, it's not like me to do the obvious thing, right? Plus, that poll was 5 years ago. A lot of people have seen that poll, so it wouldn't be a surprise to a lot of people. It's 5 years out of date. And also, I wasn't entirely sure of what criteria they use to create the ranking in the poll. Because as we know, the question that they ask is, do you know this person? Do you like this person? So I dug into it and I went, and it turns out that although with, say, films or something, they might ask a question about the film, and that question is probably open for maybe a week or a month or something like that. And then they collate the data. With people, there's just a general ongoing survey of people. So people's sort of rankings go up and down over the course of time, I suppose, depending on whether what they're doing is a popular thing. I mean, politicians, actors, everybody else, musicians. So there is more recent data for all the Doctor Who actors. So I dug into it and I have conflated, is that the word I want? I've compiled all the information about the Doctor Who actors. I've also included the showrunners and some off Doctor Who actors, but I've not put those in the rankings. I've just thrown those in as by way of an example of where they fell. But here's the thing. The question is, do you know who this person is? And they have a score for the number of people who said yes or no. And then the secondary question is, do you like this person? And it turns out that the people who say yes or no or undecided only comes out of the percentage of people who said yes. So that the percentage number for the people who liked a person isn't an overall percentage.
That makes sense, right? So if
No,
they say I don't know who this person is, they're not going to say, and I don't like him.
No, but what I mean is, if 80% of people said they'd heard of David Tennant, for example, and 60% of the entire 100 people said they liked David Tennant, then that's not 60% of the 80% who said they knew who David Tennant was. And I thought that was a weighting, WEIGHT, that should have been taken into account. So what I did was I took the percentage of people who said their opinion. I weighted that against the number of people who said they'd heard of the person, and then I weighted that against the actual results that they had published. So I have the most accurate version of this poll I could possibly get.
As a member of the Royal Society of Statisticians, that sounds dodgy as hell to me.
But we
I think it's more
appreciate your
accurate.
hard work, JR.
Well,
However
indeed.
dull it sounds.
But here's the thing.
We did the half hour already.
I didn't just do that and think, oh, I've done something brilliant. I double checked it. So I went back to the YouGov website, and what they also have is a list of the most famous people and a list of the most famous actors. And I double checked whether the order I've got is the same order as they've got in those lists. And although not everybody on this list appears in either or both of those two lists, Peter Capaldi, for example, is listed neither as a person nor as an actor, but instead as a comedian.
Harsh criticism.
He's listed only as a comedian. So, but because the ones who were in the list appeared in the same places with more or less the same percentage as I had, I figured that means that what I'd done to get this list as accurate as I could probably fell about the right side of getting it right.
This reminds me, with Doctor Who coming back, we're going to be having conversations about viewing figures again, aren't we?
I suspect so. You know, the people who watch
Carry
it
that
before,
to account for the iPlayer.
yeah, the people who watch it before broadcast, by the way, only get counted in the 7-day figure and
Oh
not
my
in
God,
the
we're already
overnights.
having it.
I mean, you brought it up.
I don't
Right,
want
shall we
Matt,
get into this?
I think I've seen your will to live disappearing over the horizon somewhere.
No,
There.
That's my plan.
I'm looking forward to talking about whatever it is we're going to talk about. It's the preamble explaining the statistics behind it.
It's JR. What were you expecting?
Well, I'm
Delivery.
imagining that probably most of the people watching or listening to this
Nice.
will be Doctor Who fans, and they will appreciate knowing what I've done.
Okay.
I believe this is probably about as accurate a snapshot of what the general public thinks of the actors who played Doctor Who as you can possibly get. So what people are rating is not these actors' performance as the Doctor, but just these actors as actors. So it could be for other roles as well. And so that's going to make it slightly interesting. And of course, these are not Doctor Who fans. If the Radio Times, for example, runs a poll of who's your favourite Doctor, chances are it's mostly going to be Doctor Who fans who are responding to that poll. This instead, general public goes on the YouGov website and get asked random questions of the questions that are available to be asked that month. And so the people who've been asked to give their opinion in this poll are not Doctor Who fans, they're just the general public. So to that end, there's no data yet on Ncuti Gatwa, so this only goes up as far as Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah,
There's no data
already.
There's no data, or bizarrely, on Peter Cushing. So John Hurt, I've given a place in this list. He's not numbered in this list, but he's there because I wanted to compare how he goes. But Peter Cushing, they've never asked. Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat, they've asked about both of those, but they've not asked about Chris Chibnall yet. So there's no data for Chris.
He didn't like the publicity, so
Fair enough. So, of the 13 regular ongoing Doctors, for that is who comprise the rankings I have here, I mean, the bottom one on 35%, and don't forget, this is cross-indexed between recognition and popularity, on 35%, which is quite considerably lower than the next one up. Do you want to guess?
Colin
Baker would be my
Yeah,
or
Colin
Hartnell.
Baker.
It's got to be Colin Baker or Hartnell.
Jodie
Or Patrick
Jodie.
Troughton.
Is it Jodie?
Oh, Matt wins. Patrick Troughton, least popular Doctor by a country mile.
Okay.
So I'm not timing
Outrageous.
us on this, but just throw your opinions out. Or I suggest what we do, because I mean, we're not here to sort of belittle the actors who've played the Doctor, but we should try and understand how.
I'll leave then.
We should try and understand how the general public. So, for example, Patrick Troughton, my partner, he's her least favourite Doctor. Her nickname for him is the grumpy mop top, the angry mop top. Because, and I never noticed this until she said it. So, as fans, we've been told that Patrick Troughton is the mercurial Doctor, the cosmic imp, and so on and so forth. She just said, oh, he's just angry all the time. And then after that, you start to notice that, yeah, actually, he's pretty grumpy through a lot of it. He has moments of mercuriality, but actually, Patrick Troughton's a pretty grumpy Doctor. And you just wonder, given that he's been in things like The Omen as well, but that's a relatively small role, you just wonder if Patrick Troughton hasn't quite crossed over into the public consciousness.
I think being dead for 32 years when the survey was taken had a lot to do with it.
William Hartnell came above him. And don't forget, I
Hmm.
weighted popularity against recognition.
So with recognition, we've seen more William Hartnell than Patrick Troughton. So every Doctor Who documentary spends longer on William Hartnell than Patrick Troughton. We've had more repeats of William Hartnell. We've had William Hartnell return in different forms, effectively.
Yeah, plus Adventure in Space and Time was the big,
Yeah.
one of the big parts.
And also Hartnell is in, 2 quite big British films as well. which Troughton isn't so much. Like
said-
he's in a
he's
bunch
nev-
of films.
He's
I
not
You
grew
a
up-
see him on
leading.
a bank holiday in like Jason the Argonauts or whatever it was, but you're not remembering that guy.
He's
Like,
not
when
the
that
leading
photo
man,
comes
is
up on
he?
YouGov.
I
He's never
grew up
leading
watching
man.
more Troughton than Hartnell because of Box of Delights and because of Harryhausen and
Yeah.
because of The Omen. So I think that does serve him well, but I think more recently they don't tend to repeat them that
Yeah,
much.
because I was going to say, who's watching Box of Delights every year
Yeah.
apart from us nerds,
Yeah.
or maybe the
Yeah,
viewers
yeah.
of BBC Four? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Do you want to know who came in next then? So, okay, the next Doctor up is on 48%, but in between Patrick Troughton on 35% and the next Doctor up on 48%, Stephen Moffat came in at 40%. So Stephen Moffat's more
God.
popular and more well known than Patrick Troughton, apparently.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I
I mean,
guess.
that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, but I said the writers aren't seen on the screen generally. You might see them on the confidentials or the making ofs or when they're doing publicity junket, but your average viewer doesn't see the showrunner.
No, quite.
Your average
And the
viewer
next-
might watch awards shows,
Yes.
which sounds like I'm being snobbish, but it's not. But award shows are watched by normal people, not just like fans.
For sure, but I think mostly they only remember what the actors won. I don't think the writers, the producers, or the people that the public probably take away from those things.
So I guess the question is, has Moffat been on things like This Morning and The One Show as well?
Not
So
as
those-
much as
No.
Russell, I guess.
No, was it the
No.
after party was probably his last major public appearance. After that, you can see why he didn't make any more.
Yeah, yeah.
He does like Newsnight occasionally and things like that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like pops up, but yeah, not
That's
He's
not
not.
got a
He's not
huge
as.
crossover,
populist
has it?
shows. No.
I mean, he's always
Yeah.
interesting, but he's not got that presence of Russell T Davies, has he? Because Russell is that showman, the carny hustler type.
Right, the next Doctor up on 48% recognition crossed against popularity. In 12th place of the 13, Sylvester McCoy.
Hmm.
So I
Hobbit
guess
didn't-
he's
Hobbit
Radagast.
didn't do him much
yeah,
good.
yeah.
The Munsters didn't cause his career to fly into the.
I'm guessing that Radagast, that's the character who plays in The Hobbit, isn't it?
Yes.
Radagast, is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Radagast the Brown.
guessing even if people remember that character, they might not necessarily associate it with him, because I should imagine he's under a fair amount of either makeup or costume or both, and you might not necessarily realise this is the guy who played the Seventh Doctor.
Yeah, but more well known than Colin Baker, unless the people who are asked, "Do you know who Colin Baker is?" just say, "Yeah, he's the guy with the scarf."
Oh, not just that, but Colin Baker was on ITV's biggest
Oh,
flagship
okay.
show.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
afraid,
recently,
yes.
Forgot about
wasn't
that.
he?
Yes.
And I'm assuming this data has been collected over the course of the last several years. I'm assuming they don't just ditch the data from 5 years ago and start afresh. So this is data that's been added to over the course of that time, but includes that data. So Colin Baker, he's on 54%. He's just above Russell T Davies, actually, on 49%. Colin Baker's in 11th place. So he's a little bit up from Sylvester McCoy, but he's not sort of like out of sight.
So Russell T Davies isn't as popular as Colin Baker. Joe
No.
will be happy when he hears that.
Yeah, Russell T Davies on 49%. So he's nearly 10% up from Stephen Moffat. But I guess you'd probably expect that because Russell T Davies is very much the JNT of the modern era, isn't he?
Yeah. In the good ways, I'm sure.
Mm.
Unless you believe Ian Levine.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, Ian Levine felt the same about John Nathan Turner in the end, didn't he? Mm. Yeah, Colin Baker then.
Comment, my lawyers aren't expensive enough.
Colin Baker then is in 11th place on 54%. And I guess, and this is not, I don't think, necessarily a comment on their capabilities. I think this is just, I mean, it's where their careers have gone, really, in the meantime, isn't it? Neither McCoy nor Baker were very visible as actors after Doctor Who, were they?
No. I mean, I think I feel like Colin Baker maybe more so because he's always turning up
Really?
in like guest like he must have done a Midsummer Murders surely.
I think
He
Sylvester
did
McCoy
it-
had
both did
had
Doctors,
more
didn't they?
prestigious career
Yeah.
than Colin Baker because he did Lear as well and The Hobbit. So he's
yeah.
kind of popped up
But
in surprisingly prestigious places.
How many people
That's
saw
true.
McKellen's Lear though?
Well, that's my point.
Which is why McCoy's down there.
Which is why McCoy's
Yeah.
below Colin
He's
Baker.
a prestige actor, is
Yeah.
what you're
I
saying.
mean, Colin
Unlike-
Baker was in that. What was the Christmas thing that you guys talked about that I
God,
couldn't
yeah.
bring myself to watch? Christmas at Kringles or Christmas.
Christmas at the Holiday
Christmas
Inn.
at Holiday Inn. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, shall we get into the top 10 then? So
Okay.
on 56%, just slightly above Colin Baker. You're going to love this one, Matt, because you keep saying how he's the recognisable Doctor who can come back because of his... It's Paul McGann, 10th.
Okay.
And yeah, I think he has had a career since Doctor Who. So
I guess
It
not.
doesn't
quite a-
count.
Decent one.
He's had a decent career, but not as a sort of a named actor. He's had a career as a character actor. He appears in loads of different things, and people will recognise him, but just not,
Yeah, it's
probably all the
possibly
McGanns
similar to
just
Troughton.
fade together.
But was McGann not a regular in Casualty or one of those for a while?
Yeah, I think
Mark.
was it Holby City or something? I think it
Was
was.
it? There's a huge recognition factor comes with a big part in that.
He was almost sharp. That was his big career move. It was going to be sharp, and then he broke his leg.
After Alien
Oh,
didn't come off.
it's ligaments he did, isn't it, or something?
Yeah.
That was it. Playing football.
Playing football on set just on the first day of filming, and then they had to fly Sean Bean in.
Wow. I am surprised to find Paul McGann as low as he is, though. And I don't think that does him many favours in terms of, the things you talk about. Could he lead a spin-off series? I'm not sure.
But these polls, I mean, my God, these polls.
Yeah.
But this is the public. That's my point.
What I was going to say was, like, I think that's all well and good, but the fact is, what they're asked is, do you recognise this guy? And they go, yes. And it's like, do you like this guy? And they probably go, well, I recognise him, but I cannot remember what I saw him in. And it'll be like, well, it'll be Luther, or it'll be Holby City, or it'll be whatever. And they probably won't click yes. They'll probably click no or not applicable or whatever the option is. And then that probably dents the ranking, right?
Yeah, maybe. I think Paul McGann, weirdly, wasn't as recognised either, because don't forget, I've weighted this so that it doesn't favour either of the two things. So I've
Depends on the
kind
photo
of
they used as well.
And my point with Paul McGann coming back is always he is recognisable, generally speaking, but he's also still able to run around. He still looks a bit like his Doctor.
He might have been 10 years ago. He's in his he's heading towards 70 now.
Well, I still think I'd go with him rather than Tom Baker for a big five episode comeback.
Also, with the McGanns, there's a which bloody one is it factor.
Yeah, you can just substitute them.
True.
You can substitute them in.
Yeah.
One scene with Joe, then you get Mark to come along, do a bit of running, and when he gets tired, you just bring Paul on. And
is that your regeneration crisis?
The other one.
I mean, when it comes to bringing a Doctor back for a multi-episode comeback, I think we know which side they've decided for that one, don't we? We've just had it, haven't we?
Tennant, who's not coming back today, according to Russell.
Well, they've been saying the same thing over and over. There's been no indication that he is, though. I mean, the suspicion I heard was that there was a big unit presence, obviously, in both finales. And so if he came back, it would be in a cameo as part of the so Donna's daughter is still working for UNIT, and so obviously it makes sense that you'd have cameos from Donna and David Tennant,
just
right?
A cameo, the David Tennant Doctor just stuck at home making breakfast for people whilst they prepared to go out and go into the story. He's going,
why not?
It's just David Tennant just turning his phone off.
Why did I give up being in stories? This is so boring, he thinks.
He handed on the baton. Shall we find out who came ninth?
Christopher Eccleston. Go
on 57%, it's William Hartnell.
That's not bad.
But I mean, yeah, considering he was the first one to die 50 years ago, pretty much, and I don't think he necessarily gives off the. He doesn't come across as the most charismatic either of actors to have played the part, or in the parts that he plays. Generally speaking, he always plays pretty frosty characters. I'm fairly surprised that he's like 5 up this list.
But every time the history of Doctor Who is talked about, they have like a 10-second piece on how good William Hartnell is, with a picture of William Hartnell up. He was the first Doctor, and then there were some others, and then Christopher Eccleston brought it back. That's kind of
Sure,
of the way
but
it goes.
how many people do you think watch those things?
Well, they're
Not
just
many.
on. They're just on. I saw one today with Shoot to Get One. They're on all over the internet.
And also, talking
They're
the
on all
advent
over
of
our
talking
internet
pictures
because we're
TV.
Doctor Who fans, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Mark. Good
Well, aside
point.
from
Make it
Doctor
again.
Who, the advent of talking pictures TV means that there's actually quite a lot of William Hartnell films on the telly these days, which might account for a little bit of it. And also, This Sporting Life and Brighton Rock are very kind of well-known, kind of well-regarded films.
The public
So
played
even
on
if you
Strawberry
weren't thinking for
Road.
that-
That's all
And
I'm
let-
saying.
And let's not forget he was in Celebrity Big Brother in 1982.
What, the corpse of William Hartnell was in
Yeah.
92?
What,
Okay.
you young people, get out of my bed.
5% up. 5% up from William Hartnell on 62%. In 8th place, Peter Capaldi. So Peter Capaldi comes lowest of the post-TV movie Doctors.
So that's more I think that's more damning about his actual Doctor, because that is a relatively recent Doctor. He is a pretty well-known actor. So to come behind John Pertwee, so to speak, is kind of a bit damning of that particular Doctor, I think. Probably not very much, because it's a YouGov poll, and we know that the most popular science fiction film in YouGov is Resident Evil 6, Return of the Resident Evil, or whatever it is. So we're not trusting these polls. These are interesting, if weird polls. But if anything's a reflection on a Doctor, I think that's one.
I think this poll is a more trustworthy poll, because this is asking a more general question rather than sticking a film in front of you.
It's trustworthy because JR's fiddled it, is what was he saying to you?
Oh, I've not fiddled it. Like I said, I checked this against their own sort of results, and it came back kosher. So I think
unmolested by JR.
I think Capaldi, though, like, it's obviously his era wasn't exactly broadly, it's not like what we're gonna get next, like the next couple of weeks, where it's like big, bold, loads of money behind it, pushing it as like, you've got to watch this. It was kind of just, what was it? Same old, the Doctor and Clara and the TARDIS.
The very interior inward-looking, gloomy in a lot of places.
Yeah, it was more thoughtful Doctor Who, and I think there's room for that. But also,
absolutely, but it doesn't translate to good YouGov poll results.
I think it's not populist.
Yeah.
I think, as we know from politics, populism isn't necessarily a good way to go forward. Sometimes you have to,
But also, Capaldi has either side of Doctor Who has basically played a bunch of villains or antagonistic characters. So things like the Devil's Hour, for example, he's the baddie in that. He was Richelieu in The Three Musketeers immediately before Doctor Who. And of course, in the thick of it, Malcolm Tucker is an antagonist rather than a protagonist, really.
Wasn't the thick of it BBC Two as well? It wasn't as big as its cultural footprint would
although
suggest.
There was a movie as well.
In the Loop, was it?
Yeah, in the Loop. So it's higher profile than most BBC Two comedy, but yeah, you're right. It's still not as high profile as obviously something like Gavin and Stacey or whatever.
Yeah. Plus, it was obviously went out after 9 o'clock because of the language.
But I think part of this popularity thing is, do you think they come across as like a nice person, somebody you'd want to go to the pub with? And the guy who's playing Malcolm Tucker, Count Richelieu, and the sort of evil bastard in
To be honest,
hang on.
the actor Peter Capaldi puts me off going to the pub with Peter Capaldi. He's terrifying.
There are
no, he's
4
lovely.
Scottish people on
Okay.
this list, and we've already had 3 of them. There is an anti-Scottish agenda with the general public here.
There is.
What a
Especially
shocker.
as you ask anybody in Scotland who Sylvester McCoy is, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, Archie from Still Game."
There you
So
go.
you know,
Nice. Right. You said Peter Capaldi was coming behind John Pertwee, and immediately above him in the list, in 7th place with 63%, it's John Pertwee.
I don't want to know what you got up to as a teenager, Capaldi, frankly, at that point. When visiting the set.
But I think it says a lot that John Pertwee manages to.
Sorry, I've got the images.
Oh dear.
It says a lot, I think, that a Doctor Who finished 50 years ago. I guess Wurzel Gummidge lives in the consciousness of people of a certain generation. But I think the point of this poll is a lot of it, and this is why I tried to weight it against purely recognition. I think a lot of it is people talking about who they recognise from television lately and films lately as much as anything, I think. So I think it's quite a sort of good distinction for Pertwee that he comes as high as he does. What did I say? He was 7th.
Yeah, I think with Pertwee as well, he was as much a light-end figure as he was an actor, obviously, and I think that sticks in people's heads. You know, he did Noel's House Party a few times. That's always going to get you in the public eye.
Yeah.
And the Carry On films for a generation,
course,
they
yeah.
were a piece. I mean, it's a fact that a lot of these things are just fading now because they don't repeat Carry On films anymore. They don't repeat any of John Pertwee's television anymore. So he is sort of.
ITV2 or ITV4 is it Carry On gets on? So, but
Oh, really?
again,
Okay.
you have to look for it rather than rather have it
Yeah,
right
ITV.
accidentally.
ITV4 is very much in the sort of that sort of 60s, 70s, 80s sort of thing, isn't it?
Middle-aged bloke channel. Your Dar channel.
Absolutely. But yeah, you're right. And it still reaches a fair amount of audience because it's ITV, or at least it was doing. I'm not sure whether that's since streaming really hit in the pandemic. I think some of those channels have taken a bit of a hit, but they were still doing pretty well. ITV4 was still quite a major channel, I think, up until about COVID. Anyway, do you want to know who just missed out on coming in the top 5?
Who have we got left now?
Davison.
In 6th
Jodie.
place on 64%, Tom Baker.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Between Peter Davison, John and Tom Baker, I'd imagine Peter Davison is more well known now. I mean, he
works consistently.
He's in. I know this isn't very recent polling, but he was in Escape to Paradise or whatever it's called, the spin-off, Return to Paradise, and he's in Braithwaite's. So he is popping up.
Yeah.
But he did work an awful lot after Doctor Who. And we should have the Peter Davison conversation in a minute, but hell, we're having it. So he did work an awful lot for the sort of 10 or 20 years after Doctor Who, didn't he? Having taken Doctor Who so young, he was still in his prime when he left. In fact, he probably hit his prime after he left, didn't he, frankly? I don't think he's been in it as much in the last sort of 5 or 10 years. But then I guess he's in his mid-70s now or something like that, isn't he?
He's still been in a few, because like Matt says, that sort of Death in Paradise thing. He was in The Gold recently.
Yeah.
He works a lot with Sally Wainwright, not on Happy Valley, but on her other stuff.
Right.
He doesn't really have the face for Happy Valley, does he?
No.
I can't quite imagine.
He's a bit southern.
I mean, we all saw Caves of Androzani. I think that's the closest you'll get to Peter.
And he did Law and Order UK as well. So he did quite a few.
Yeah, was it
Whereas
Braithwaite, Dangerous Detective?
Yeah.
Tom's done nothing.
Yeah, you're talking back in there.
Randall and Hopkirk was the last thing major thing Tom Baker was in.
Apart from Day of the Doctor, yeah.
For sure. He did a couple of presentings.
Fort Boyard.
He did.
He was the voice on Little Britain, but you wouldn't recognise that, obviously.
Yeah.
No, people wouldn't recognise that, John. He was quite famously the voice on that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And so people would recognise that, I think. Also, he presented Have I Got News for You twice, I believe.
Right.
And I think that is quite a thing for getting people into the public consciousness, because I think there's a certain level of recognition you have to have reached before you'd even be considered.
Do you know
I
what?
think-
I'm now imagining a country where Tom Baker was Prime Minister instead of Boris Johnson, and it's a better world.
Yes, indeed. And of course, whenever people talk about old Doctor Who, Tom Baker's name always comes up. So I think he's relatively well. I think he's relatively well recognised. I think Peter Davison is just slightly better liked. I think Tom Baker's probably one of those ones where people go a bit ooh ah.
For all we go,
So-
Tom Baker is the big recognisable guy. You have to be coming at 50 to remember any of his stories. You know, so I just remember I was 7 when he finished. Or 6 actually. I was just about remember the tail end of his time. So it's that kind of audience aging out.
Oh sure. But don't forget, this is not Doctor Who fans, so they're not being asked about Doctor Who. This is just about the actors. So it will be about other things as well. So it will be about things like Have I Got News for You as much as it is about Doctor Who. But I think Tom Baker's name kind of goes with the series. So I wonder if people recognised them. Some of these people might just have recognised the name and sort of had a vague notion of who he was, and maybe the hat and the scarf, and not really much more than that.
Maybe
Anyway.
I'll get talking pictures about it, because a few of his films do crop up on there now.
Oh, sure.
So how many films has he got? It's like 2, isn't
Is
it?
it Vault of Terror,
Oh,
Nicholas
no.
and Alexandra? Is that it?
And the Harryhausen.
The
Rasputin,
Mutations.
yes.
Mad Monk.
Oh, Mutations, yeah.
Yeah, Rasputin. So, I mean, half a dozen, I think, at least. Yeah, he had to... Don't forget, when he was cast as the Doctor, he'd already had like a 15, 20-year acting career.
That's true.
Yeah, the Pasolini. That's
Pasolini.
always always cropping up as our bits of Tom Baker and Pasolini.
Yes.
Oh, Life and Loves of a She-Devil. That was the only other thing I could think of after that.
Oh, and did he not do Stanley and the Women, or was that John? That's John Thor, isn't it? But was Tom Baker not, or am I?
I think that was Lives and Loves of a She-Devil.
Is that what I'm thinking of?
I was just prompted by Matt talking about bits of Tom Baker popping up.
Oh yeah.
Let's do the top 5. In 5th place on 65%. So there's a bunch of them between 62% and 69%. So I mean that's approximately 2/3. So most of them did relatively well, I think. But in 5th place on 65%, Matt Smith. So of the modern Doctors, Matt Smith's second lowest.
So should we take a moment to mourn Matt Smith's film career?
Well, yeah, I was
No,
going to
because
say,
of
I
his
think
choices. I blame
that
him
plays a-
entirely.
that's a big part in it, doesn't it? Like, what's he done? Morbius,
But
Pride
also,
and Prejudice and Zombies.
Terminator 17.
Yeah.
But
That
also he
dreadful
played-
Ryan Gosling one.
he played Prince Philip in a massive series on
True.
The Crown. On is it Netflix, The Crown?
But nobody
He's been-
likes Prince Philip.
Well,
True.
Yeah, there you go.
And he also plays an unlikable character in the Game of Thrones
House
thing
of
as
the
well.
Dragon.
right.
This
So
poll would be,
his
poll would be
television.
pre-House of the Dragon, wouldn't it? JR,
Sorry?
hello. The poll would be pre-House of the Dragon, wouldn't it?
No, this poll was
Oh, it's
about
ongoing. Right,
3
yeah.
days ago. Yeah, I did
Okay.
this
Right, yeah,
about
fair
3
enough.
days ago.
Okay, so Matt Smith's television career is doing okay, but his film career isn't quite. His stage career is doing well, but that obviously the sorts of people that vote for the YouGov would go near the West End.
Nicely themed with his A Man of the People there, Matt.
Yeah.
Given, though, how popular his Doctor was, and that he was the Doctor for the 50th anniversary in that huge telecast, I am quite surprised that he's below at least a couple of the other modern Doctors who are above him. But anyway, and we've already kind of had this conversation, at 66%, in 4th place is Peter Davison. So he wins out of all the classic series Doctors. And I've got to
Makes
say,
sense.
well, I when I saw that, I was like, what? But then when you think about it, and you think about his career outside of Doctor Who, it does actually make perfect sense, doesn't it?
And he's got that personality where you think he'd be good company anyway. And then you watch
Yeah,
him behind the
sure.
sofas and
Everyone remembers his role in the Tomorrow People burned into their
psyche, yes, and the natural horror.
his portrayal of the bovine animal in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, yes.
The dish of the day.
Yeah.
the top three then, and obviously these are all modern doctors, as you probably would expect, given the nature of, the kind of people they're asking. In third place, on 68%, above Peter Capaldi, above Matt Smith, Christopher Eccleston. Now, Christopher Eccleston gets a lot of sort of slightly odd publicity. A lot of news stories are kind of slightly spiky about Christopher Eccleston. But I suspect a lot of people are kind of looking at that and maybe thinking, good for him, standing up for himself, etc. So I don't know. And he must get a lot of respect for the stuff he's done outside of Doctor Who. Plus, we think of Doctor Who as his big populist role, but he's done big movies and he's done other big TV series. He had quite a big role in Heroes, if I remember rightly, and that was massive, wasn't it? About 15.
And he was in The
Leftovers
as a regular as well, which it was like a pretty sleeper hit, but it was pretty well regarded. And then you've got the A Word on the BBC, which I think was quite well liked.
The latest True Detective. Is he in that?
Yeah,
or am I
he's in that.
He never sang. He didn't sing the theme tune to Button Moon, though, did he? imagine him singing the theme tune to Button Moon.
I would pay to hear that. Has he got a cameo? We can do it. We can get him on Cameo to do that.
In second place, then, and all the naysayers would love this. In second place, on 69%, the second most popular and well-known actor to have played Doctor Who is Jodie Whittaker.
I was really hoping you were going to say David Tennant. That'd be very funny. But...
I'll tell you.
Hang on, we got a Joe Cam for this. He's doing laps of the room, giving us all these signs. Come on.
I think for a start, she's the first female Doctor, and that's obviously everybody. Even if you don't watch Doctor Who, you're going to know that because it was a big deal at the time. She also comes across as a right laugh in interviews, like on Graham Norton and stuff like that.
And she's done other big telly, so even if you don't know her as Doctor Who, you'll know she was Doctor Who, and you'll have seen these other big telly programs that she's made, and you'll recognize the actor from that and have an opinion on the actor from that. And it's sort of
huge.
Yeah, but even the thing she did, I can't remember what it was called, where she played the Doctor.
Something Me, wasn't it? It was the one she was disguising. Trust Me, that was it.
What it's called.
See, that was massive when that came out. Do you remember? And she's been in a few other things recently as well. So I think, and this, a lot of this is BBC One as well. And the thing about BBC One is the entire population partakes of BBC One. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. So even if you're not seeing her in those programs, you're probably seeing the trailers. You're probably seeing her interviewed on BBC Breakfast or on the Graham Norton show or whatever. She is a pretty ubiquitous presence, really, amongst the names on this list.
She is a man of the people, as John would say. Whereas, ironically, Matt Smith is in Enemy of the People right now. So maybe that explains something.
The Ibsen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, on stage then?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Apparently it was very good, I'm told.
Yeah, I walked past the theatre and I saw all the actors coming out. I didn't see Matt Smith. I saw an actor I didn't recognise.
Well, when you say you saw all the actors coming out, then you lie.
I saw the actors coming out, I said.
He didn't see the play, though, because he's a heathen.
No, because I can't afford to get into any of the theatres. I can just about afford to get to London. I can't afford to do anything when I'm there.
You take a second mortgage out. What are you worried about?
My first
Liz
mortgage.
Truss again?
It's just my first mortgage.
Right, I promised you also that John Hurt, I had given him a figure, so I included him in this list. He is between Jodie Whittaker and David Tennant, so John Hurt would be second if I'd have counted him amongst the rankings. He was on 74%, so he's about 5% above Jodie Whittaker, but still more than 10% behind David Tennant, who obviously came in first on 85%. I'll give you a couple of facts, or a fact split into three, I suppose, before we move on. So after I did all my cross-indexing and came up with my numbers, I said I went back to the YouGov website to check on some of their other lists just to make sure I hadn't made any terrible mistakes. And so they have list of the most popular people, the most popular actors, the most popular contemporary actors. All the other names on this list were like number 630, number 472. The highest ones on this list were like number 132 in this list of the most popular actors, or 167 in this list of the most popular people. David Tennant, in every list, the most popular actor, the most popular contemporary actor, the most popular person, David Tennant was in the top 10 on every list. He was way out
Not
above
surprised.
all of the others.
Yeah.
So yeah, David Tennant, of course.
He's a lovely man, by all accounts. I think that's
yeah. And a very popular one, and
yes,
one that is utterly ubiquitous. So his recognition factor was pretty much off
And
the scale as well.
Works. And despite playing, was it Dennis Nielsen? Was it he played?
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. People still like him.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go, David Tennant.
Scottish serial killers get away with it. They're always likable.
No, Scottish actors playing Scottish serial killers.
No,
The
the
Dennis
serial
Nielsen
killers
very
are
much is in prison.
That's what a serial killer would say.
Yeah.
It's
I don't
notable
have
that
the
all the
time.
other
I genuinely don't have the time to be a serial killer. It seems like a whole big commitment, and I just don't have the time for it.
Well, when you retire, you have
maybe,
lots
yeah.
of space.
Check them all in the time lash.
What's this, Detective Sergeant Gash? It's a victim with a deep fried Mars bar shoved down their throat. It's a Scottish guy.
but
He's been suffocated with bagpipes.
oh dear, suffocated. They shoved one down his throat.
That's the deep throat, anyway.
The only thing I'd like
Take
to
a claymore
note,
to him, Mark. Take a claim.
God.
Or a skin do. Either of them do.
all the actors who played the Doctor in their natural Scottish accent landed up outside the top 8. The one who plays
That's damning,
the
isn't it?
Scottish actor who plays it with an English accent wins by a country
Yeah.
mile.
So the one who went native, the one, hang on, that's English face. That's disgraceful.
I've got to say though, the Welsh actors who played the Doctor,
Non-existent, I think you'll find.
I mean, we've even got a Yorkshire one, so even I'm covered.
Isn't John Hurt Welshish?
He's
Sorry?
Derbyshire. Derby.
Derbyshire. Oh. Have I ever done my John Hurt impression on the podcast?
Oh God.
I can
God.
literally only do two words. I can literally just say John Hurt in the John Hurt accent.
Go on,
John
then.
Hurt. John Hurt. That's my John Hurt impression.
Right,
like
I
he's in the
definitely
room.
think it's
John
time to call
Hurt.
time on this podcast.
Okay. I'm thinking there's going to be a folk horror here where Matt is going to be stalked by the ghost of John Hurt.
I think he'd recognise his own voice. If I say it 3 times on the podcast, then he does appear dressed like Caligula.
I'm definitely calling time on this
Oh,
podcast
God.
now. That then was what we've done instead of a preview, because we've basically done previews already, and I figured we should do something else to help the start of the new series of Doctor Who, which I guess if I put this straight out, you will be watching new episodes of Doctor Who a little over 24 hours after you watch this. I will get the audio of this out tomorrow morning, so you'll be listening to this just before new Doctor Who. So enjoy is all I can say. We'll be back to talk about that. The videos of our reviews will be going out around about Saturday tea time, I think, and the audios will be going out on Sunday mornings. Until that happens, I was JR.
I was John.
Oh, I was Mark. Damn it.
And I was John Hurt.
Typical Scots and typical Oxfordshire. We will speak again soon.